I think we can get this started right now. I just want to start this off with a quick reminder. So this is the MH Masterclass. This is episode 2 that we are doing right now. The goal of MH Masterclass is really to try to empower the maintenance professionals and the industry leaders with really knowledge and best practices. So it's not necessarily 100% focused on a CMMS or on maintenance in particular. This is really us trying to give you some global view and global ideas around maintenance and best practices in the industry. So just a quick overview here. As Nick said, this is part 2. So we did have a part 1. We will be sharing this and doing a quick recap a bit later on. But for now, one thing I want to say is the webinar is being recorded and everybody will be getting a copy. So even if you cannot make it to the meeting, which I'm not sure why I'm saying that actually, Nate, because if you're not making it, you're not hearing me right now,
Yeah.
but everybody will be getting a copy of the recording via email approximately next Monday. And if you want to ask some questions, we do have 2 extraordinary keyboard warrior right now with us. So we have Hudson and we have Benjo. I want to thank them personally for being with us today. They will be there and they will be able to answer the questions that you have. You can submit them in the chat or in the Q&A box as well. So I'll start this off by introducing myself or reintroducing myself for those of you that were in the part 1 of the MX Masterclass. So I'm Vincent. I'm a senior software implementation consultant here at MaintainX. I have a background in mechanical engineering. I used to work as a production supervisor before joining MaintainX about 2.5 years ago. I have a lot of experience with various training and implementation of other CMMS software as well. And in my career right now with MaintainX, I have implemented over 500 sites. So I have seen my fair share of various industries. And now I will hand it off to you, Nick, if you don't mind giving us a quick
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm one of the co-founders here at MaintainX, and I work on helping a lot of enterprise and folks with strategic initiatives to help make sure that they can be successful. I'm also leading our MaintainX community. If you haven't joined that yet, you should. It's free. Anyone can join. You don't even have to be a customer to be a part of that. I encourage you all to check that out. And yeah, I work. You'll see me at most of our MaintainX events as well, and excited to be here.
Thank you, Nick. So I want to start this off with a quick recap of what I presented during the first portion of the MX Masterclass on how to build a successful preventative maintenance program from scratch. So just a quick notions here. So previously we talked about smart KPIs. So we want your key performance indicators, so KPIs. We want them to be specific. We want them to be measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So we want to make sure that every objective that you set yourself respect those 5 criteria. This is very important. After that, we want you to have a strategy. So don't get overwhelmed. Aim for short, mid, long-term goals. A notion that I personally enjoy a lot. It's the crawl, walk, and run approach. We'll probably talk about it a little bit today, depending on the questions that we will answer. But keep that in mind: crawl, walk, and run. Build your foundation. Start simple. Start with your critical equipment, basic procedures, and SOPs. Optimize your program as you go. Review, what, when, and how you do your inspection. And last but not least, of course, leverage technology and use a CMMS. This is why we're here really today. And so this leads us to the live Q&A. So we got a lot of questions that were submitted to us. We want to thank all of you for all of the questions that you sent over. There was some of them that were, that we received maybe a couple of times as well. And those are really the questions that we will focus on today. Starting with the first one. And if you don't mind, Nate, what I will do is I'll read the first question to you, and maybe you can go ahead and give your thoughts on the answer that you would like to give our listeners.
Yeah.
So first question is, how can organizations create more flexible preventive maintenance schedules to adapt to dynamic operational needs, such as biweekly or custom cycle?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one we hear every day, and I think there's a couple of ways to answer this. It really, is partially dependent on where you are in your journey. And I think the first place, this isn't really a great, you don't necessarily want to start by jumping to a flexible preventive schedule if you haven't started there, right? So the first part is where do we start? And I really recommend you work with your OEM PM schedules. It's a great starting point. It may feel excessive, it may feel like it's not enough, but it's a really great baseline to start at. So figure out what your OEMs recommend, and that's where we kind of define as like the crawl phase of this process, that beginning starting point. Um, Now, what happens once you start doing those PMs is you can get to that walk stage where you start to understand, you can look at and reflect on your reporting data. You can start to figure out where uh, where are we having issues? And how does that relate to the work that was being done? Are we actually completing those PMs? Are we doing them correctly and completely? And if so, and we're still having issues, you may determine that you need to ramp, the OEM recommendations may not be right for your organization because you're using your equipment in a way that is more demanding than or the environmental circumstances, whatever you're putting through those machines. It could sometimes be something as simple as the humidity in your facility or the temperature is demanding that you accelerate those, and maybe instead of doing it every 4,000 runtime hours, you do it every 3,500. And it gives you the ability to have a baseline to know how to tweak it. Or if you have equipment that you're doing those PMs and you feel like you're doing them more frequently than necessary, maybe you can stretch that out a little bit and decide, hey, let's stretch that timeline out a little bit so that we can open up some workload resources and bandwidth to focus on some other areas of our operation, to make sure that we're working with the resources we have. And then I'd say like the run phase of that is something where maybe you get to, where it's relevant, a condition-based monitoring style system where you can incorporate sensors, whether it's vibration or temperature or flow meter readings, depending on the equipment, to where you can start to determine how can we get more predictive with our usage here to make sure that we're running these PMs as frequently as necessary. So and to kind of circle back, you can't have an effective dynamic PM schedule without data. And so building that data foundation so that you kind of know, are we getting better or worse, is really the starting point there. And that's where I kind of lend my expertise, or like my experience is with the organizations that are doing that successful, is the right way to do that. And when you talk about data, like, Maintain X offers a really robust way, but whatever system you're using, you want to be able to figure out, like, what are our root cause analysis? What are some of the things that we can do to identify why these breakdowns are happening, or why they aren't happening? And sometimes it's issues like you don't have critical spares available on shelf, and so you're having these outages that wouldn't necessarily exist if you had something on the shelf but previously you were having a hard time justifying spending the money to have that resource on the shelf. So the data is what's going to help your organization do things the way that you need to do it. Because even if you have the same equipment as someone else or another organization, even within your own company, the circumstances and the conditions might be different enough to justify modifying that a little bit.
That was a very complete answer. Thank you for that. And may I
Yeah,
say, thank you for using the crawl, walk, run approach as well.
yeah,
Right
I
from the
love that one.
get-go, first question.
People
So
understand.
yeah. So
It's
if
pretty
we
simple.
can summarize it a little bit. So um, the crawl, so the very first portion would be use your OEM manuals, start from there, get a base of it. And then whenever you start to add some data, review your reporting. So that would be the walk approach. And then
Yeah,
from the reporting, maybe do some advanced analysis, maybe even look into, sensors to get even more data and even more real-time data. And that would be like the run portion of it. Is that pretty much what you would say?
yeah. I think that's the best way to sort of start thinking about it.
Okay.
And you're going to learn what makes sense for your organization. You may find that it's personnel; they're not doing it correctly. Um, and then you can learn why is one site, having better results than the other. It could be a training issue. You just don't know what you don't know until you're measuring it with data. So
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Moving on to the next question. So how do you make a biweekly PM I only see weekly and monthly options.
It's
If
a
you don't mind,
product question, really.
it's
Yeah.
a product question. And so what I will do is I'll jump very quickly. Hopefully it will work. So you should be able to see Maintain Apps right now on the screen. And really, very simple. If you want to have a different recurrence for your PM, so from the top right of the screen, whenever you create a new work order, and I'll just chip right through it to the recurrence. But in the recurrence, you have here, whenever you select weekly or monthly, so if you want bi-weekly or quarterly or anything like that, you do have the ability with the drop down right there. So instead of saying every 1 week, you say every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, so on and so forth. Same goes for monthly. So instead of every 1 month, you could go every 3 months or quarterly, every 6 months or semi-annual. I mean, the options are unlimited.
Yeah.
So that will be the answer. I don't think we need to go into too much details about this one.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Up to the next one. So what are the benefits of tracking multiple assets within single work order or preventive maintenance procedure, and how can it impact efficiency and resource management? You want to
Yeah.
go or
So
should I take this one?
yeah, happy to take a stab at this. We get this
All right.
question a lot. People want to be able to put multiple assets in a work order, and there are systems out there, legacy solutions out there that have supported that in the past, and we've thought about this really, deeply, and it can be a bit of a controversial issue, but there's no doubt that if you're doing an inspection on a minor asset and you don't necessarily, maybe in some cases you may need to review 100 pieces of equipment in a single work order, or in a single process, I should say. It Someone says, I don't want to create 100 work orders and have to go through individually and do that. You should be able to put all the assets on one. But when you think back to, even our first question here, where we talk about it's about being able to measure data, it's really hard and really clutters up your data if you have a single work order associated with 100 separate assets, right? And so that's sort of the thinking that has informed our strategy to develop this, because we want to really make it easy to understand what's going on with each individual asset. And so that said, if an asset isn't necessarily, the tracking status of that asset isn't important enough to necessarily track it on an individual work order, I oftentimes recommend that people, look at it, assign it to a location that asset's in, and you can run that as a checklist, or if pass flag fail. So where if a specific asset fails, you can create a corrective action and assign it to that specific asset. That way you can kind of get the best of both worlds. But at the end of the day, our belief is that that's the way to keep that, to manage that effectively. If it's important enough that you want reporting on it on the asset level, then create a separate work order there. Vincent, I know you've had this question many times as well. You've got a similar take on it, but I'd love to hear how you position it to folks as well.
Yeah, totally. I think you're spot on. Putting my implementation hat right now, this is absolutely something that we hear a lot. You said it right. I'll take the example of like fire extinguishers, which is something that pretty much everybody's familiar with. But you could have, I don't know, hundreds of fire extinguishers at your plant, at your site, which makes it really messy in the system if you create one work order per asset at this point. But as you said, it falls back to on the reporting standpoint, or even like on a maybe it's you just have to do those inspection on a monthly basis. Um, like, does it matter if at the end of the day everything goes well every month? You don't have any issues with your fire extinguishers. One thing that we suggest during implementation is let's create one for all of your fire extinguishers at once. So you have one single work order that you need to create. But then, and you said it right, if you have a failure on one of them, the asset exists in the system, and you can then go ahead and create an individual work order for this specific piece of equipment. And this will give you the additional information that you need at the end of the day to take those, data-driven decisions from the reporting of your system that you are using. So, I mean, I think we're pretty much saying the same thing here,
Yeah.
where it's really database, and in terms of saving time, definitely there's a save that can be done there.
Yeah, and that rolls into our next question, which was ultimately the same question, but it's phrased a little bit differently. So we just wanted to make sure that someone didn't say, well, no, I really want to be able to do this. How do I do that? And to those folks, I say, hopefully you can appreciate where we're coming from on this root cause analysis. And believe me, there are folks that I've worked with who had this view, and we've converted them, and they understand now after they've been using the product for a while that the value of that reporting. But I will say a little bit of a teaser there. There's something in the works on our end so that we can potentially, help y'all, have it your way as well. And we're trying to be really thoughtful about that. And I won't say any more than that, or I'll get in trouble with my product team. But I don't want to promise anything, any timelines. But we are going to find a solution there that, can hopefully help people, give it a try themselves. But I still think there's going to be some challenges with reporting, and you're going to ultimately realize that there's a smarter way to track this over time.
Yeah. And maybe it would be a good idea taking the example that I had previously. If I jump really quickly into maintenance again, I did create a quick example of what I was referring to. So again, switching view right here. Going back to the fire extinguisher inspection, something that I said is, create like a general asset. And after that, what you can do in the procedure is you can highlight your individual equipment. So even if they are not tied directly to your individual equipment, whenever you add and you inspect and you have a failure, as we know, the system, so maintenance will create this corrective action work order. And this will allow you to really assign the corrective action directly to your fire extinguisher one or to your fire extinguisher two. And this is where you will also gain, the business intelligence that or the data that you need to have the good information into your report.
Yeah, love it.
All right. Next up, how can businesses minimize the visual and operational clutter caused by high frequency preventive maintenance while maintaining efficiency? Um,
Yeah,
I mean, to me, this really ranges using filters, using categories. I think the categorization of your work is clearly what you need to be focusing on. I'm assuming that we're using a CMMS or software, so having some filters is definitely the way to go.
yeah.
Um, I mean, whenever I see clutter in a visual report or visual table, there's not really any other way to go than using some custom filters that you can hopefully save and that you can
Yeah.
use at a certain frequency depending on your need. Um, but that would be my way to go. Not sure if you have something
I
to
would
add on
say like
this.
hop over to the product view for a second
Yeah.
here, and just look at like, the unfiltered work order list view, the table view. And we can kind of show you like it can look crazy. We have customers doing thousands of work orders a day. And you can imagine trying to figure out what am I looking at. It can get a little crazy, but the filters are a little bit underutilized by some of these folks where I see them trying to build these out one by one at a time. And the save filter is a super great shortcut. So if you click on my filters here, I'll show you a couple we built out on the organization filters. And you'll see here, if I just want to look at one or two specific thing and build these out, it can dramatically shrink and allow you to focus your view. And so if you're not using these filters today, um, you're definitely giving yourself probably a little more heartburn than you need to, because these are a big game changer to help you keep track of very specific tasks, and you can kind of go back and forth between these. And so um, definitely, utilize these if you aren't. And these work across not just the work order views, but you can look at this in reporting. You can look at this across the organization. And so that really helps keep track of these organizations where there's a high volume of work that needs to be done, and allows you to focus on what matters.
Yeah, totally. And you know, just to keep going on filters, of course, there's a ton of options. Right now, the filter that we have is really just to focus on a specific type of inspection that would be like a monthly inspections that are open, in progress, or on hold. But this can be used as well for, let's say, your critical assets. So if you have certain pieces of equipment that you really want to have good visibility on the work that was done and the work that is to be done on them, then definitely go ahead to the filters. Go ahead and select those equipment and save those filters. And as you can see directly from here within our filters, It's super easy. In one click, you get exactly the view that you need. And as Nick said, not only it's available from the work order table view or the work order, whatever the view, so the work order module, but it's also available through the reporting module. So you get those same filters. They will give you all the information that you will need. Right. Going back to the question here. Next up, this is I believe this is exactly what we just answered, right? So a lot of daily and ends up cluttering the board. So we just showed it in the product. So we'll keep moving. An interesting one here. Can sub assets have additional assets? And so for those of you that are using MaintainX today, I'm sure you're aware that we released some new level of hierarchies for assets, which means that if you are on the premium subscription, you do have the ability to have an extra level of assets. So not only you have your parent asset and your sub asset, you also have the sub asset. So this gives you three total levels in the asset module on top of the two levels that we have for locations. And on top of that, whenever you go to the enterprise plan as well, then I think you get like five level total in the assets, which is a lot. And I
Yeah.
want to add a caveat here. A lot of time, and again, putting my implementation hat here, a lot of time people ask us, I need to have additional level for our assets. And whatever, my team and I, what we respond to them is keep in mind that whenever you add a level of hierarchy for your equipment, okay, yes, sure, on a management level, on like a asset management level, it's good because this is how you're used to it. But on an end user level, so if you take your technician that goes to create a work order, if they need to open up five level of hierarchy to find the exact equipment on which they want to create a work order, this adds a lot of complexity to the system. And this might lead, again, going back to the data point, this might lead to a loss in terms of quality of data because the work order will be on two level higher when in fact it should be two level lower on another piece of equipment. So there's a fine line between the usability and the complexity of having additional level.
Yeah. That's a big part of why we really were hesitant to roll this out, especially early on. And even today, as you can hear Vincent saying, it's with an asterisk, like be very thoughtful about how you're building those hierarchies so you don't add more complexity for the end user, because then you might defeat the point. And for folks that are going multiple layers deep, I really encourage you um, to leverage QR codes. That way you're making sure your technicians can scan and track the right piece of equipment and hit the right hierarchy level, or at least have an easier way to navigate it, because um, the QR codes are probably the best way to maybe subvert some of that confusion and make it simpler. But yeah, you really want to be thoughtful and careful about how you're engaging folks with that.
Totally.
And
All right.
so here we are with
That
QR codes. Planted that seed nicely, huh?
there you go. So, what role do advanced technologies like QR codes play in streamlining industrial operations and improving traceability? If you don't mind going ahead, and then I'll share my thoughts after
Yeah.
that.
So some of the customers, I go do a lot of visits to a lot of our customers, and I've seen a lot of different operations and the way they've set it up. The ones that really are flying and they're doing really great, and everybody is on the same page across their operation with what we're doing, have really been very proactive with QR codes. And as much as we hate to see a QR code when we go to a restaurant, it's actually really helpful in these environments when there's a lot of equipment that looks similar or has a nomenclature that isn't necessarily known to everyone on the shop floor. So, there's a couple of different ways that QR codes I found are utilized really well, and I'll share a couple of these now. Is obviously on the equipment where it makes sense, right? And what does that mean when you have a QR code there? It means your technician can go right up to that equipment and can immediately see all of the work that's been performed on it, all of the asset information. We can even build work order templates into it so that they can perform maybe something that doesn't occur on a recurring basis that's predictable, but is a template that you want for the purposes of keeping your data structured correctly. You can build these templates and have them start and create work, or view the outstanding work orders on it, make sure they're doing it on the right work. Um, it's uh, it's a great way to help them do less thinking as they're going about, thinking as it relates to inputting the data correctly. We want to make sure that we reduce the friction there. So highly recommend QR codes. But the other great use case for QR codes, and I highly encourage you to do this if you aren't doing this already, is make it use those QR codes for putting in work requests. Let's say you've got an operator or a production line manager, um, and he's on production line one, but you have 10, 20, 30 production lines in that facility, and they may all have very similar, if not the same equipment. And you want to make sure that he is, he or she or one of the operators is putting that work request in on the right line. They just scan that QR code, put the request in, and we can automatically make it such that that work request will be associated with the correct production line or the correct piece of equipment. And that'll allow the maintenance supervisor and team to make sure that they know exactly where they need to be. So it takes the less, well, your team has got plenty, enough on their mind that they don't need to be remembering how you've labeled everything in your system. We want to try to take the thinking out of it there. And so this clear, and one other piece of it I'll say is that, like, you don't just, the ones that are doing this really well, they don't just have a QR code slapped there with nothing on it. Put some extra context around it. Say this QR code is responsible for XYZ things. And we have several different ways we can help you accomplish that. And you can print QR codes with stickers, or you can print them on, we've got partners that help us print them on really durable metal plates as well. So, and it's surprisingly, inexpensive. It's relatively affordable for what you get there. So I highly recommend you look at that to really make it easier for your team to interact and engage with your reliability program.
I thought I would have to share my thoughts on this question, but really you went from A to Z and back. The last thing I would have, and again, I like to put my implementation hat. I love implementation. But the last thing I would add is one thing that we can do with our system as well. And as you know, if you are using MaintainX, the QR code right now they need to be scanned through the MaintainX app for it to lead you to the right asset or to the right location or parts or whatever. But there is a way that we can help you set it up so that it even works with your phone camera as well. This is a specific way to set up the QR code, so you can ask your maintenance representative if you want to go this route or if you're just interested in learning more. But what it does is it allows anybody that walks right next to one of your equipment. It should be someone that pays a visit to your plant, and while they are walking around, they see a leak on the floor or they see something, and then they have a QR code right there that they can scan. They don't need to be a member of maintenance. They don't need to be part of your organization. And this will allow you to just get that request directly. So even if somebody is not from your company, they can let you know that there's an issue and that you can receive this request and then turn it into a work order and then fix that leakage. So that's pretty much it. Right now we're at the 30-minute mark. So we have
Awesome.
about 14 minutes left. I would say we're right on time. Um, so what we'll do right now, I have a couple of questions. If I remember correctly, we have about 5 questions. Those would be rapid fire questions because I think the answers are quicker to give. And so we'll jump right into it with the first one. Can we customize additional expenses to work orders beyond labor, travel, other? For example, adding an environmental fee. Um,
Yeah.
I can take this one very quickly. The answer
Yeah.
is yes. It is possible now to do it. So let me just share my screen very quickly. Again, going back to MaintainX. So from the settings right there, you can go into your features if you're an administrator, of course. Um, so when you go to the work orders, whenever you scroll down, you see that we now have custom cost type that is available. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks, I would say. And what it allows you to do is you can say, on top of labor, travel, and other, you could have this environmental fee, and I'll try to spell it right. Just like that, you create it. And what it does is whenever you go back to a work order, and I'll take any work order that we can find, you will have the ability to add costs for this specific type of work. So you see other environmental fee. And you will have the ability whenever you export the data from the system to see exactly how many dollars went into this environmental.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say is a caveat in case there's any, IT or ERP administrators that are watching this. Um, you know, try to think about it the way a human would. Um, and so it's easy to see this and go, oh, great, now I can put all of our cost codes in there and all of the crazy numbers. If your whole team doesn't understand what those are you really making life easier and making your data higher quality or not? So I encourage you to use these where it's relevant. There's a lot of value to be had there, but try to really put your end user hat on as you're exploring that so that you don't accidentally make those so confusing that your team doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we were saying before, right? The fine line between the complexity and just adding some more information into the system. So always think about the people that will be using the tool every single day.
Yeah.
Second one, how can I separate facilities and equipment KPIs? Um, to me, this goes back to categories and filters again.
Yeah.
Um, Probably running report with facility, category, or equipment type and things like that. Um, Not sure if we want to go into some more details. I think we pretty much talked about it.
Yeah. It's the filters. So what you
Yeah.
would want to do there is really make sure you're dialed in on categorizing the assets or the work
Mm.
appropriately, and then you'll filter that on your reporting. And one thing we have as well, and we have some content on this that we can, I'd encourage you to look into is our custom dashboards. You can basically have you can create separate dashboards that are specific to those. So happy to, I'd encourage you to look into that, but we'll keep moving on for the sake of time on this
Yeah,
masterclass today.
totally. Is there a way for users with the requester status to view work orders specific to their location, even if they didn't submit them? This will help reduce duplicate work orders for the same issue. Um, Maybe I can take this one very quickly. So this ability to see requests that are submitted by other members is something that is available on the enterprise plan. So it goes through custom permissions. However, what it means is for other plans like, well, any other plans that we offer, this is not something that can be done nowadays. However, as an administrator, you always have the ability to decline a request. And whenever you decline a request, you can also give the reason why you are declining it. So my recommendation for you, if you're not under the enterprise plan, is just to let people know that, hey, this is a duplicate request. This is already being worked on. This is already being watched. And that should suffice for the requester to know, okay, people are aware of this issue.
Yeah. And something I get this question a lot as well is like what happens if we have duplicate requests and things like that. If you think back to the principle of total productive maintenance, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, but there's a similar tenet. The principle number one of that is that the answer to the question, who's responsible for maintenance in your organization? The answer is everybody. Everyone should be the eyes and ears. You really want to try to condition, having duplicate work requests is actually a really good problem to have. It means that everyone's engaged in your operation, and it might be a bit cumbersome at times for a supervisor or administrator to delete duplicate requests or decline them, but that's a great problem to have. That means your team's actively engaged, and you want to be mindful that you don't discourage that, because if they can see duplicate requests, let's say your requesters can see other requests, and like Vincent said, that can be enabled for certain levels of our software. The downside potential to that is that somebody sees a similar request, misinterprets it because they aren't a reliability expert, and they don't put something in that might have added some additional context that wasn't involved in the first request. So, and they might not have realized that that was important. So I really want to say, challenge that this is you know, challenge the notion that this is an issue that you have duplicates, because sometimes you're getting additional context that can help make sure that the technician has a more robust picture of what needs to be done.
Yeah, great addition right there. Definitely. Next up, We have only one facility and aren't managing multiple locations, but cell coverage is spotty depending on the provider. If I connect my team to our guest Wi-Fi, will that solve the signal issues? Some team members currently have to go outside to write or access work orders. Um, well, yeah, definitely. If they are signed on a Wi-Fi, even if it's the guest Wi-Fi, they will be able to have access to maintain X just like they would with the cell coverage. Um,
Yeah.
Now, if they don't have the Wi-Fi or the cell coverage, of course, we have the offline mode that still allows them to complete work. And whenever they get back into cell coverage or Wi-Fi, the data will be synced and will update the work orders that they have completed. But to the point of this question, I guess Wi-Fi is perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can I get a year by year history of completed work in different categories? Something tell me custom dashboard.
Yeah. A custom dashboard can help with that for sure. Especially if you want to have one that a setup that you can save and reference from time to time. But in our reporting dashboards, you have the ability at the top to set the window of time that you want to review reporting. So if you have any issues finding that, definitely we've got a lot of documentation on that. So we're happy to do that.
Yeah.
Share that with you as
And
well. So
yeah,
give them
and
a quick preview. There you go.
exactly. Just very easy from here. You can select last couple of years. But one thing I wanted just to add, again, if I go to the created versus completed, we also have the ability to group the data by category directly from here, which means that you could, utilize those table in the custom dashboard and have one of them show, okay, this is 2023, this is 2024, this will be 2025 eventually, and you will have exactly the difference between the different years or calendar year separated by your categories that you have in maintenance as well. So to me, this is the way that I would go, and this is what I would suggest as well if I receive this question.
Yeah.
Last one, for non-full access users, is it possible for someone to record a meter reading and request approval from an administrator? The goal is to maintain the integrity of the meter reading date, as administrators may be too far from the work site to accurately record reading themselves. Um, this to me, this falls back to the abilities of a requester users in the system, which is to submit requests. Unfortunately, there's no interactions with meter or meter readings. Um,
Yeah, it comes down to who do you trust to to adjust and update that data, and ultimately, if that's someone you do trust to have access to it, you want to make sure that they have access to the system. I'd also challenge you to say, as much as possible, start thinking about. I understand resources are a constraint for folks. This is not I know this might be on your wish list already, but try to start thinking about how can we start moving towards IoT meters, sensors
mhm,
that can record this for you automatically. The reality is anything that's being manually input from a data standpoint today in your operation is should be something on your radar to start thinking about how can we automate that? How can we make that to where we have someone who's working 24/7 to support a reliability journey that doesn't take breaks, doesn't call in sick, and is constantly reporting the data so that when something is wrong, it gets flagged. So that'd be my, a secondary piece to that as well. Um, and so yeah, that's where I'd suggest on that as an add-on, a plus one there. And one other piece here, I know we're coming towards time. I'd love to just give a quick plug to the MaintainX community. I see that we have a couple comments on that. If you haven't been a part of our community yet, it's a perfect day to join. We've got a lot of great questions and answers going on there every day from real folks out in the field. It can be about anything related to the industry at all, or it can be about MaintainX product specifically. We are going to have a special chat here that we'll share in the link to here in a moment that you can go into and ask any follow-up questions you have, particularly as it relates to this, and we'll be able to answer those in the community for you as well. So click that link that was just shared in the chat, and sign up, and we look forward to seeing you there. So,
Yeah,
anything else, Vincent?
no, I think that that's the perfect ending actually for today.
We have a
One,
slide. There we go.
yeah, we
Boom.
have a thank you slide. Absolutely. Be on the lookout for our next image masterclass. And last but not
Yeah,
least, thank you, Nick.
you all are great, and we're excited to be here. Thanks again.